The funding for this program is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Friends of 4, 10, and 12.
Tonight, we talk with Idaho State University President Myron Coulter. He resigned that job last week to move to North Carolina. Good evening. For the last 8 years, Myron Coulter has been the president of Idaho State University in Pocatello. For most of that time, as fellow Idaho College presidents will tell you, it's not been easy running a state-supported institution of higher education in this state. It has been the era of tight budgets, of reductions in services and personnel, and what some higher education officials in Idaho call the brain drain, the departure of some of the best university faculty to other states where salaries are higher, opportunities better. And now Myron Coulter, the senior university president in Idaho, is leaving the state to become chancellor at Western Carolina University. The North Carolina University system picked Coulter for that job last week from a field of 181 candidates. Dr. Coulter will take that new job on August 1st. He joins us in Pocatello tonight to talk about that new job and the higher education system he leaves in Idaho. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Mark.
First, by all means, congratulations on the new job. Tell me just a little bit about what it entails and how it compares with what you have been doing.
Well, Mark, thank you very much for your congratulations. We certainly are going through a period of mixed emotions in our family right now. Having come here 8 years ago and committing ourselves to this state and to this institution, we fully expected to fill out our career here and then perhaps look a little bit more toward the trout streams and the great mountains and the beautiful country of Idaho. There have been intervening factors, and now it does appear that we will be making a change. But we do feel very much that the years we have spent in this state have been very productive for us as individuals, and we're very proud of the university we have served and the faculty and the students who have worked with us during this period of time.
I think you indicated to a news conference in Pocatello on Monday that the difficulties that I alluded to a moment ago, overfunding primarily, was at the base of your decision.
Yes, indeed, Mark. That had to be the overriding factor. The state of North Carolina consistently ranks in the top 10 in the nation in their support for their universities, and they have 16 universities in their total state system of public education. And that was the case when we came to Idaho, and even long before that. Our state also had enjoyed a prestigious position such as that. And it's gratifying to know that we will be going to a place where those priorities are there, they're intact, and they have certainly put the resources into their institutions, and they appear to us to be rather well funded.
If the figures I saw are correct, the enrollment at the school you're going to is, about 7,000, which compares to ISU's, 4,500?
Yes, if you're looking at the FTEs, which is what most people talk about, we are about 4,500 FTEs, about 8,000 or 9,000 enrollment of heads here. In Western Carolina, they're approaching 8,000 full-time equated students, so it is a bit larger than ISU, and the array of programs is a bit more comprehensive than we have here.
And the budget is about twice as much.
Yes, it's a substantially larger budget for the operations of the institution.
What shape, well, before I ask you about what you're leaving behind, let me ask you about where you're going, I guess. You mentioned that the financial support for higher education in North Carolina is a factor in your moving. What's different about the way that the state institutions function there and the support they get? What's different there from Idaho?
Well, I think the primary difference, Mark, is that they have written into their code in North Carolina that the institution shall be funded at the current level during the following year. There will not be questions unless there is some dramatic or drastic accident or occurrence that takes place in such things as major enrollment shifts or something of that sort. What we call the maintenance of current operations is automatically provided. And the discussion then centers upon what should be known as the change budget there, which is what we call the above the maintenance of current operations, or new programs, equity funds for salaries and so forth. But there is a given there that says that you will have what you had last year unless there is something very, very dramatic. And they have told me that they have not had such an accident as that occur in the ken of most of the chancellors with whom I have talked there. That's the basic difference.
What shape do you both leave ISU and leave this system in Idaho? How would you characterize the position we're in with higher education?
Well, unfortunately, I cannot say that I leave Idaho State University in as good a shape as I would like to leave it. I would like to think that all of our programs are adequately funded, as all of our institutional heads would like to think. So I'm not unique in that respect. But with the continual cutting which has been necessary at our institution in our operating expenses and our positions, we are understaffed in a number of areas. Many of our programs are not funded as well as they need to be funded, and we're going to face some problems in accreditation in areas such as pharmacy and some of our long-standing programs, which are right now feeling quite a substantial pinch and being unable to bring in new faculty replacements, for instance, when we have a vacancy. So we have a number of programs of that sort that I do not like to leave at this point because they do need some strong guidance, some strong leadership, some strong support. And it is my hope that support will be forthcoming. And I believe that the board, the State Board of Education, is mindful of these problems, and that the legislature has been made aware of these over a number of years, and that if they can find some way to overcome some of these difficulties, they will not let these programs fail. They're programs which should not fail. We do not have a lot of frill programs, and so we're talking about programs that we consider to be quite vital to the health and vitality of our state.
But again, some of these problems you mention are not problems that you will encounter in North Carolina, I take it.
No, that's true. I just read a newspaper today from North Carolina, and Western Carolina just added 3 new master's degree programs last week. That was good to see in one sense that they are still growing. They have some 90 programs at the master's level compared to our 40 at ISU. So there are those kinds of differences, and they're doing a good deal in terms of innovative approaches to education and serving the surrounding area, I think, quite well. And that's a refreshing thought to see any state and any institution with the capability to do that.
Did you go looking for this job?
No, I was nominated for this job, Mark, and frankly, there have been some opportunities in the past 3 years that I haven't even given a second look at. And some of them were very attractive positions, and that does not mean the jobs were offered to me. I was merely asked if I would become interested as a candidate, and I had just routinely said no, I would have no interest in those positions. This year it was somewhat different. I received a letter that I had been nominated, and I thought, well, perhaps this time I'll let this float and see what comes of it. I still did not have any sincere interest in leaving, and did not think that much would come of this, and I didn't know that institution, nor did I know the state system in North Carolina well enough to feel that I had a sincere and genuine interest at the outset, which was probably 3 or 4 months back.
Again, back to the ISU financial situation. In a general sense, again in financial terms, is ISU in worse shape than the other state institutions?
Well, I guess that's all depends upon whom you ask, but I think, I feel that we are. We've had to reduce many faculty positions, and at this point in the past 4 years we've cut 90 positions out of the institution. We've cut another 20 positions this year, 10 of them faculty, 10 non-faculty positions, and so we're leaving somewhat of an understaffed programs, and many times people think that that's exclusively related to the full-time student-faculty ratios, that we should have a higher ratio. And in fact, there are programs in which we could have higher ratios. And so those programs are, as a matter of fact, growing. We're experiencing enrollment increases over the past 3 years. We're up 32% in applications right now over this time last year, so the signs are very good for growth of our student enrollment. But we are in a little worse shape than we were. We just cut another $400,000 out of our operating budget this year, and anytime that continues...
Which affects things like what?
Well, it's going to affect a number of our academic programs. For instance, we're now beginning to phase out the Department of Journalism. That will, in a few years, when all of our current students who are in the program graduate, we will cease awarding the degree in that program, just as we did in architecture a few years ago. The Master of Science program in chemistry has been now closed. There will be no more students admitted to those programs. The master's program in education for school psychological examiners has been closed. We have shifted the counseling center from one division of the university to another in order to save some funds. And we've made then, in addition to that, a number of faculty and non-faculty position reductions. So we've cut about $400,000, which will become effective July 1.
As you well know, Dr. Coulter, it's been the contention of partisans of Idaho State University, people who have long supported the school, and from some others, that the school is just not treated fairly in the way this money is divided up among the institutions. Treated fairly, I guess, by the Office of the State Board and the State Board of Education itself. Is that really the bottom line here, right at this moment, considering the fact that all of the money is tight, that ISU is just not getting its share of what is a fairly limited amount of money?
Well, again, Mark, it depends upon how one looks at it. I certainly feel that we need more money. For instance, last year we were unable to give any salary increases unless we had cut more faculty positions, and I chose not to do that. The other institutions did have the capability of giving some merit increases that ranged up around 4%, and no one on our faculty or staff received any salary adjustments. Now, that was a judgment call on my part. We could have reduced the university further to give those salary increments. The other institutions were not forced to reduce their institutional staffing in order to do that, and I felt that we wanted to keep our programs intact also, and so we opted, and it was in consultation with the faculty that would not be done, that we would not reduce the university further. If one looks at the funding formula, certainly from my point of view, I feel that there are other factors in the formula that need to be given consideration that seem not to be, and it's primarily based upon the numbers of students who are enrolled in various programs. Given the fact that there is a weighting system there that does attempt to accommodate the differences in program level and program diversity and complexity, it still remains that our percentage of the budget is being reduced from one year to the next, and that's been a very difficult matter to live with. And I think one can appreciate that fully only if he or she lives with it and has to go through it each year. It becomes a very debilitating and frustrating exercise to know that once again there will have to be some reductions made in the funding of the institution, that we will not have the same level of funding percentage-wise that we had the year before, and that there will have to be a reduction made. Some would say, well, when we look at it in terms of the number of dollars that are behind each student, then we're overfunded. Well, we have some programs that are very, very costly programs, such as the dental education program, the IDEP program. All of our health-related programs are quite expensive because we have only so many stations, and you can put just so many students into those stations, and you have to have so many faculty to teach those classes, and therefore the costs do go up appreciably. In our College of Pharmacy, which is the only one in the state, the costs per student are high. My analogy or metaphor for that is that it's the same as the farmer who operates 50 acres and another farmer who operates 100 acres. Both of them have to have a tractor, and if another one has 200 acres, he may have to have two tractors, but there is a basic cost of operating a 50-acre farm that probably isn't a whole lot different from the basic costs of operating a 100-acre farm. And there just are some fixed costs in our higher education system that we must have. For instance, our faculty salaries must be competitive, regardless of the size of the institution. we have to have a faculty who are graduate qualified, who are qualified to work with doctoral students to direct doctoral level research. We have 6 doctoral programs at the university, and so we have to have faculty throughout the institution who can serve on committees for those students and who have the qualifications themselves to operate as the advanced graduate level faculty. Now, there are plenty of institutions in the country who have to have the same qualities in their faculty, and we have to compete with a nationwide market for that type of faculty.
There is a suggestion by some that despite your contention that ISU and I assume most of the rest of the universities in the state don't have many what you call frills, there is a suggestion that maybe Idaho can't afford all the higher education that it's trying to dispense. Is that true? And given the financial situation in the state, and if it is true, maybe we should look at some radical solutions to this funding situation, like consolidating or even eliminating an institution.
Well, I think that a state can afford what it wants to and what it declares that it will. I think other states have similar questions in their minds right now. During the 60s and 70s and even back into the 50s, those were considered the boom years of education. Everything was concentrating then upon education, turning out technology just as we're getting into once again. But with the era of Sputnik being initiated, then everyone said we aren't turning out enough physicists, enough mathematicians, enough scientists in the natural sciences, and enough humanists and so on. And so the institutions were propped up, and a lot of money was put into developing those qualities as a national priority, as well as individual statewide priorities. And so those programs existed, and they came into being for good and deliberate reasons. They weren't capricious. They were needed. They are still needed, but we do not have the matching resources now to continue that level of support for all those programs. And so, indeed, we must look at duplication. We must look at how many programs of the same type are being offered at the various institutions, particularly within a state which is small in population, such as we are in Idaho. And I think when one does look at that, we find that there isn't as much duplication of programs as we might have thought at the outset. Each of us has to have a strong program in liberal arts. There's no getting around that. But when we look at the professional programs and find out where is the duplication there, I think the board and their staff and the institutions are doing a pretty substantial job right now of rigorously examining those professionally oriented programs to determine how many there should be, what is the quality of those programs, who should be the ones who take the leadership in supporting those programs among the institutions and in helping manage those programs and helping teach those programs and so on. So indeed, there isn't a thing in the world wrong with accountability, Mark, and each of us must do that. But what we also must be able to do is to derive some form of incentive for continuing to reduce our institutions. We need to have some capability to shift those kinds of resources from one area that may not be so desperately needed now to another area that is desperately needed. We have a terrible problem, for instance, in pharmacy, and I haven't the foggiest notion where we're going to find the funds within our own institution now to support that. Even if we were to eliminate some of our other programs, even an entire college within the university.
Excuse me, your problem there, as I understand it, is just one of salary equity with your faculty and what they could be earning in another college of pharmacy in some other state.
Well, that's part of it, but we also have faculty vacancies and positions that we are not able to bring people to, and we also have needs for...
Just because, excuse me again, just because you can't pay them enough?
Yes, that's the basic problem, is one of salary, and a non-competitive salary. And then we have needs for upgrading our facilities, and that is a very strong need right now. And again, that takes money, and it takes it into substantial proportions.
How's the morale on your campus?
Well, I think our morale has slipped over the past 3 or 4 years. I think it was helped somewhat this year when we were able to use some of the funds that we cut. We cut more than we absolutely had to from our allocation in order that we could give some salary equity money in addition to the appropriated fund salary increases. That went a long way to help the morale of many of our faculty who just were feeling that maybe there would never be another major payday in their lives. I think that's been alleviated to some extent. There still is a strong feeling that many people are looking about to relocate in institutions where they feel that there perhaps would be a greater economic reward. But I've had a lot of expressions of support from our faculty, and I was surprised when I went to the faculty and announced the reductions which we were going to have to make as of July 1, that when I finished that announcement, and it took 30 minutes, there was applause from the faculty who realized that these were measures which had to be taken and that we were doing what we could to make their lives as dignified as possible.
Is the quality of education at your institution less today for the average student than it was, say, 3 or 4 years ago?
No, I really don't think so. And one hears that a lot. The availability of that quality is less than it was 3 or 4 years ago. We do not have as many faculty to provide that level of education. But we still have a very good quality of instruction. I have stayed in close touch with deans. I've stayed in close touch with students. I've talked with our central administrators about this, and it's an easy thing to say that we are just now devoid of quality. That just isn't the case, and that has been one of my overriding priorities throughout this. I am totally committed to the preservation of quality, and when I see that our quality is starting to dip, we take measures then that say, if we're going to have to sacrifice something to keep that quality, then we're going to have to do it. But I do not believe we have slipped in our minds and in the minds of our faculty. I know these faculty pretty well, and there are still many, many outstanding faculty members in this institution. What does concern me is that image gets portrayed that Idaho educational quality has now slipped to the nadir, and therefore our brightest high school students are casting about to attend school somewhere other than Idaho. That's very alarming to me.
And that's happening?
Yes, we have been told that some of our brighter students in the high schools of the state are saying they're concerned that if they enter one of our universities in Idaho, that those programs may not exist when they're ready to graduate. Well, I do not really believe that's the case, but I think that's an impression that somehow is being created in the minds of many of our top high school students.
Let me give you, in shorthand, the arguments that I frequently hear at the state legislature from people who say we are funding higher education at an adequate level. They say frequently that basically the system that exists in this state, the university system, is just about as good as most people in Idaho really want it to be, that it provides about the kind of service that most people are willing to pay for. And that in a democracy that ought to be good enough, that we ought to just be satisfied with what we've got. We've gone through a period of retrenchment. You say the quality hasn't suffered. What's so bad about things?
No, I think you're quite right, Mark. I think Idaho is getting exactly what it wants. I think that it doesn't have a very high priority for higher education, as high as other states do. And I think that's reflected in the fact that we find a diminishing share of the state's revenues and resources going to our universities each year. It's dropped off, and at the same time our student fees have increased rather substantially, well over 100% now in the past 4 or 5 years. So no, I agree with you fully that we're getting what we pay for, and that's all we want. What concerns me is that we are hurting a bit for keeping our great talent in our state and not letting it go to other states where it's apt to not return. We are very definitely a receiving state in education throughout this country. We have to import our own faculties. We cannot get them from Idaho institutions. Idaho universities do not produce faculty, with a few exceptions. In their doctoral programs, they're not available. We can't hire from within this state. We do not have a program in mechanical engineering, so we don't need a PhD from the University of Idaho in mechanical engineering. We have 4 Doctor of Arts programs here, and only a few of those people locate in Idaho. But we do not have the comprehensive array of programs, for instance, that will allow us to bring our highly qualified faculty from the state. Now, there are some who would say you should hire only Idaho people. Well, I think we would like to do some of that. if they existed, but we do not have them. That's just an example of where we have to be a receiving state, an importing state of talent. Well, at the same time, if we do not provide the high level of programs and the types of programs which our students from our high schools want and feel they must have in order to stay here, then we're losing on the other end as well. We're also a sending state. We're sending a lot of our talent away simply because we have inquiries that say that we would like to get into a program and finish that program, but it does not finish here. We'll have to go somewhere else to finish it off. And so they say we probably shouldn't enter it then in the first place.
To carry this argument to its extreme, and I've heard some university faculty people make this case, that really in Idaho what we have is an environment that fosters an anti-intellectual outlook, that we don't place, perhaps because of the rural nature of the state or whatever, we don't place a premium on people who are highly educated.
Well, I've certainly heard that same comment, and again, people with whom I talk, members of the State Board of Education and various members of the legislature, I don't believe they have that feeling. But I do know that there are many people who feel that we probably are as well off in education as we should be in our state, and I find that a no-growth attitude. I find that an attitude that I wouldn't call it anti-intellectual. I think people still respect and appreciate good minds and people who are able to think and also who are able to use their hands. And so I don't believe that I would cast Idaho as an anti-intellectual state. But I do cast it as a state which does not have as high priority feelings about university education as many other states I know.
The kind of person to replace you, will it be difficult to find that person, considering all these problems we've talked about here?
Well, I think that anyone who has any experience as a university president is going to ask some questions that must be answered, such as what are the trends in support? I certainly asked that question when I was interviewed in North Carolina. I said, I'd like to see how you've treated your institution in the past 3 or 4 years. I'd like to see the trend line there. I think anyone
and the answer to that question in Idaho will be not very favorable.
It's not going to look very good to them, and unfortunately, that's going to have some kind of an impact on somebody who may be highly interested in coming to this state to work and live. So I think there will be have to be some assurances made that my successor will need to be given some kind of reason to believe that there will be strong support for this institution and for the entire state system. My colleagues have the same kinds of experiences I do.
So you're maybe, pardon the expression, one of the latest brains to drain.
Well,
in terms of your being difficult to replace, I mean.
I don't know, Mark. There's always somebody who's ready and willing to come along and do the job and do it very well. And for every individual who's selected, there are 100 out there who could have done it just as well or better. So timing has a great deal to do with it.
Right. Well, I'm
so
afraid,
I think,
excuse me, I'm afraid I'm going to have to interrupt you there and wish you again the best of luck in your new endeavors. It's a pleasure talking to you tonight.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Good luck to you.
Good luck, and to you also.
Thank you, sir. That's our time for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Mark Johnson. Good night.
The funding for this program is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Friends of 4, 10, and 12.